So we have something a little different today, don't we?
That's true. It's a bit different for everybody.
Should they tune in?
You should always tune in.
Facts. I go by the name of Isma.
I go by the name of Chris.
Welcome back to the Creative Brief.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know what the Creative Brief is, the Creative Brief is a segment where we talk with fellow creatives, hear their stories, they share insights on how they do things, their process, and then we gain knowledge and then share it with you. And today,
we have a very special guest.
I feel like our guests are always special,
But
this is definitely a special guest. Kory, what's happening, sir?
Man, I'm so excited to be with you guys. I really am.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you, bro.
Well, I'm excited to be here.
Okay, before we dive into the nitty gritty, tell us a little about yourself, what you do, and what we're talking about today, bro.
Okay, so what's kind of funny about this is I told my wife that I was coming on, your guys' thing, and I call it a thing because what do you call it? I mean,
it's our show, bro.
Your show,
this is our show.
I was like, yeah, I'm coming on the show, and it's for creatives. And she said, "You're not creative."
No.
Yeah.
Don't shatter my dreams.
Yeah, maybe a bad way to start the show. But so I'm a banker, like by profession. That's what I do.
Yeah.
But I started a podcast a little over a year ago called the Same Seven Podcast. And so it's been a great experience, a great learning experience, learning about people, learning about the technical side, learning about how to try to be creative, even with a banker's mindset. Because, bankers, we're left-brained, right?
Yeah, but that's creative. I don't know, juggling numbers.
Yeah. We have calculators to do that.
There you go.
But yeah, so Mississippi boy, been in the South my whole life. Used to be a youth minister, which is, and I know we're going to get into that a little later on, but used to be a youth minister, and the passion that I have for religion and the questions that I have is really what kind of pushed me to do the podcast and to start the podcast.
So I know this is a little different than our usual guests, which I'm excited about because I love when there's an X factor, right? So we have a lot of designers, videographers and whatnot, but what I love about your story, especially creatively, is that you're using the podcast as this vessel, like creative vessel for something much bigger, which I'm excited to get into. So tell us a little bit about what the Same Seven Podcast is, its goal, its mission, all of that.
Yeah, so the Same Seven Podcast was really birthed out of some questions that I had personally. And I remember the conversation I had. It was a friend of mine. We were talking religion, we were talking faith, and he asked me a pretty basic theological question. Well, basic for someone who grew up in church and in an evangelical faith, someone who's been in seminary. And so I heard the question, and I knew the textbook answer to the question. But for whatever reason, that didn't resonate with me. That didn't resonate with my heart. It didn't resonate with me as just being someone who really loved people. And so that put me in a place to start a personal journey. And so that journey, I wanted to document somehow. Didn't know how to do it. I was like, I could start a blog, and I was thinking, do people even do blogs anymore? I don't know. I
Be careful, all the bloggers out there are going to be upset with you.
Yeah, I've made so many enemies already on the show. No, I love bloggers. They're great. They're great.
Right.
Yeah,
Shout out to all our blogger fans.
Yeah. But that wasn't the route that I wanted to take, and I had just gotten into listening to podcasts, and I was like, maybe I could do a podcast. Maybe that would be a way to document the journey that I'm on, but also to invite people to be on the journey with me. And so that's how it came to be.
So you started it, and this is always intriguing to me, that people create things to solve their own individual, I don't want to say problems, but their own questions, right? So you started the podcast to answer what exactly? So what's the goal of the podcast?
Yeah, so the goal of the podcast is to bring on people from different backgrounds, different perspectives, religious, non-religious, but to give them a platform to talk about their belief system. Growing up in the South, there is a very conservative evangelical presence. And so that's what you're indoctrinated in. That's what I was indoctrinated in. Didn't know a whole lot about other religions, other beliefs. But what I did know was that those things were wrong. You know, that those perspectives were wrong. But as I grew older and really began to meet other people outside of my thought system, outside of my belief system, I just started to recognize, man, we all have a piece of the puzzle. And I really think there's so much value in us coming together and really talking through things, discussing things. And I think everybody has a little piece of the truth, and that's where we're gonna, you know, cohabitate the world in the best way possible. That's where we're gonna have the most peace, is when we all come to the table. Everyone's invited with their own ideas, with their own perspectives, and we can share those without constantly debating. So the podcast isn't a debate. I've had several people say, you know, this guest said something that I know you don't believe. Why didn't you push back? And I said, well, that's not what the podcast is about. The spirit of the podcast isn't to debate. It isn't to tell people they're wrong, but it's to give them a platform for their belief system, for their perspective.
And what is, because religion can be
touchy.
tricky. It
Yeah.
can be tricky. I feel like it's interesting that you're using creative to, I don't want to say promote necessarily, but to bring light to different backgrounds, religiously speaking. So what has that been like for you to hear so many different backgrounds and different perspectives and different belief systems when you started this because you had your own question?
Yeah, man, it's been a journey, you know, because I'll tell you this. I remember after my friend had asked me the question, I remember going home, you know, a couple of days later and reading a book, and it was actually by a creative, Rob Bell. He's an author, he's a podcaster, does a lot of videos as well. Former pastor, actually. But I read this book that he had written, and it was tearing down this belief of hell as the way that I had always known it, to be this place of eternal torment for those who didn't believe in Jesus, right? So that's the conservative evangelical view. And so I read this book, and my belief system in hell began to crumble. And I remember so many other beliefs that I had began to crumble as well. It was terrifying. Right. So the beginning of the journey for me was frightening, because I thought to myself, what can I hold on to if what I've believed for the last 30 years is wrong? Or maybe it's not wrong, but I can't know it to be true, and I don't even know that I can believe in it. So yeah, when you're talking with different people with different perspectives, for me it was very challenging. It was challenging in the way that it made me rethink why I believed what I believed, because I used to be the type of person, and I still am in some ways, and it's a character flaw. But you hear somebody say something that you don't believe, the second you hear that, your innate thing, you want to push back. You want to tell them they're wrong. But I had to get to a place where, okay, I want to be open to that. I want to hear why you believe that. And so that's kind of how the journey has gone so far. I'm loving it, man.
So me and Chris are always talking about when we're biased to our own mode of thinking. We're literally just had this conversation this morning about a video we're going to shoot, but there's something known as the confirmation bias, right?
Yeah.
So everything that you see, everything that you read is taken in based on that bias that you already have. So what's interesting to me right now is that you're willing to challenge your own confirmation bias when you're hearing other people's thoughts and other people's opinion when it comes to religion, which is something that's like holy, like it's sacred. Like not a lot of people have the courage to do that. So, which brings me to this next question, because I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't want to be you with what you're doing, but because of that, I admire it so much, because you're able to be polarizing, you're able to kind of showcase where you stand, and that you're curious and that you want to learn. And I love that you're doing it in such a safe space kind of fashion. So my question is, how has this, like, wait, I just forgot. The thought completely slipped my mind because I kept rambling on. Hold on.
I do that so
Dude,
much,
hold on,
man.
no.
You're like building up to the question, then you get to that point, and then you're like, man, I can't remember what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Oh my
I've been
God.
The
I feel
Mox
so bad.
podcast.
The
We
Mo-
got cliffhangers
Yeah, just
everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get back to it, but tell us why you continue to push on with something that's so challenging.
Yeah, I continue to push because, like I said from the beginning, it's a journey. It was a journey then. It's a journey now. I don't know that I'll ever find the answer, that I'm looking for. But sometimes that isn't really the goal. Sometimes the goal isn't to be on a journey to find an answer. Sometimes your journey leads you to 1,000 more questions, and that's what I've seen happen. I've seen happen. In my own life where I just got to keep digging. I got to keep asking, but that is what makes the journey what it is. And so I continue to do it for that. I also continue to do it for the people who are listening, because I think there are a lot of people out there who have similar questions. They have the questions in their minds and their hearts that they've always wanted to ask, but maybe have never felt that they had the platform to ask it, never felt that they had the courage to ask it. Because when you ask the tough questions, people raise an eyebrow. Sometimes they raise two.
Big facts.
Yeah. And that can be a scary place. There are people that are kicked out of churches. There are people that are kicked out of organizations. There are people that lose their job because they ask the hard questions. I had a manager years ago at a previous job that I worked at, and she told me, she said, Kory, sometimes you got to just quit asking why and just do what you're told to do. and it was at that moment, and I knew before that, but definitely in that moment I was like, I'm in the wrong job. Like I need to be working somewhere else. But people have questions, man, and I love asking them. I love getting them. I just love the dialogue. I love the conversation, and so that's why I continue to do it.
It's funny because me and Mo have been on this strategic exploration of our mindset, just kind of furthering our knowledge and how we ask questions to people. So recently when we talk to friends, it's all based around like recently I was talking to a friend talking about inner happiness, talking about what makes them function throughout their day. And I kept asking the question, so why this particular thing? And then why this particular thing? And then, going further and further. And eventually it broke the surface level of the conversation. They were like, I don't know if I've had a conversation this deep of self-reflection in a while.
Yeah.
And it's simply because you ask why. You help people, dig deeper. You help yourself further understand the well of knowledge that you have. And it's by simply asking, well, why is particular things this way? Why don't we challenge it? Why are you settling for this? Why are we, why don't we think differently? And it takes a lot to do that. And it takes a lot to have the courage to challenge, which is a powerful thing that I'm getting from what you're saying.
Yeah, and I love what you said right there. But you look at kids. Kids are always asking why.
Right.
But it's something that they're taught as they get older not to do. In the Christian faith, in the Bible, Jesus is talking, and he's talking about having faith like a child. And so people interpret that many different ways, but I think about asking why and how a child does it, and how something about that might be actually connected to faith in a way. Like asking questions doesn't mean that you don't have faith, but asking questions will oftentimes draw you closer to the thing that you're supposed to be drawing close to. So yeah, man, I love asking the why questions. Love it.
Okay, I remembered. So we're not cutting that part. I've been listening though. I've not been in my own head thinking about the question. I have two segues now, and I'm going to get to them quickly before I forget it. First thing is you talked about how it's very challenging to ask these questions, and how sometimes it can get uncomfortable, and people are saying, "Hey, this person said something you didn't believe." What's it been like putting yourself out there to be the poster child? That's why I said I don't want to be in your position, but I admire your position because it's so polarizing. So what has it been like for you to put yourself out there, to be the podcaster for something that's very, very, especially in the South, hard to talk about?
Yeah. I've kind of eased into it, to be honest with you, because at the beginning, my first 5 or 6 episodes, I didn't really give a lot of my own opinions. And so it was honestly a platform for them to talk about their beliefs. But the last, I would say 5 or 6, I've started to come out of my shell a little more and talk about some things that I disagree with, and some things, some truths that I hold dear to myself. But it's scary, man. When you're going against the grain, and I'm not, I'm not doing anything just super different, or people have been paving the way for the last several hundred years in regards to pushing back against Orthodox religion, and we live in a country where, man, everybody has a platform to give their opinions, to give their ideas, which is so awesome and so scary at the same time, because we have to have the personal responsibility as consumers of all this information to differentiate between what is good information, what is bad information, what is true, what is false. And as a podcaster, I take that to heart as well, because I want to push good content, but at the same time, I want to push things that are true, and maybe not even things that are true so much as things that'll get people to reflect inwardly. One of you were talking about that earlier. Reflect upon themselves and think about, why do I think this way? Why? What belief system? What errors are there in my belief system? How can I be a better person? How can I be a better neighbor, a better friend? Because in the end, that's what it's about, right? That's what it's about. So the questions that we have, if I'm asking you guys questions, and the whole point is because I want you to believe what I believe, then that's not being a good friend. That's not being a good neighbor. That's not the point. Yeah. The point is, again, and I know I keep saying this, but there's a table. We're all invited. Yeah. So let's come to it, and let's enjoy each other and talk about things.
Well, and you mentioned something so powerful earlier, and I wrote it down. It's that this staying curious and asking these high-level questions and challenging your own thought process and other people's thought process has allowed you to be stronger in arguing for your faith, right? So I think that's really cool too, because a lot of us are just out here spewing information that we haven't even backed up, whether it's by continuous study, whether it's by intellectual debates, and we think that we're sharing information to other people that's correct or even valuable, when in reality it's like this echo chamber of information without critical thinking. So what I wrote down, on top of you challenging your own belief system, which is now leading you to like strengthen your belief system and back it up in a way that's more concrete versus like, I think it's what I read, is that you're teaching others to critically think.
Yeah.
Which, like, I've heard some of the podcasts, so like I can sense when it's like, okay, hold on, give me a minute, let me think about this, because you're asking me a question that is representative of who I am. It's not just saying anything, Yeah. So I think that's really powerful. So I know that we're talking a lot about the podcast. I want to tie it back in a little bit to our world, the creative world. So the biggest things that you've talked about are making people critically think, making people be able to back up their belief system. And right now, actually, my business coach is constantly saying, like, is there a reason for why you believe what you believe? And when it comes to business, when it comes to how you run your business, or are you just, again, in this echo chamber and just regurgitating information? So this process has taught you how to like help people critically think, yourself to critically think. How has it taught you the actual process of creative? And like what you've learned so far to be able to back up the decisions you're making for this show that you're running?
Yeah. Wow. We were talking a while ago about how there's a platform for everybody to have a voice. Anybody with a cell phone can have a podcast. And you hear people say that. Like, people will say anybody with a cell phone can have a podcast. And so that was kind of what was in my head until I started trying to do a podcast. And I realized there was so much more to the technical side of it. You know, there were a lot of things, especially not considering myself a techie dude or super creative even. The fact that, man, there's some stuff that I'm going to have to learn. And it's discouraging too. I mean, it can be very discouraging when you enter a zone where you're not comfortable, you know, where you enter the zone that you're not used to, where it's something that you might not be good at. And I remember looking at blogs. That's funny. Yeah. Full circle.
Full circle back to the blog.
Back to the
Sounds
blog.
like you should write a blog.
Yeah. That's what I should have done to begin with. No. And I'm just trying to figure out which microphone to use, which software to use. And there's all the technical pieces that are involved with it. And it's a process. It's a process to get guests. It's a process to put yourself out there and to say, okay, I'm about to put some thoughts and some ideas for the entire world to hear if they choose to listen.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because you have evidence of everything you've ever said.
That's terrifying.
You can't get it back,
Exactly.
man. Yeah, you throw it out there, it's probably not coming back.
But then again, that goes back to how are you backing up what you're saying?
Right.
Are you just saying something to say it because you think like, I'm going to start a podcast, rah. Or do you have data to back up what you're saying? Yeah. Are you really listening to the person you're interviewing? Like all of these nuances to be able to put out quality content, which I think is what you strive to do, really.
It is, man. I've always wanted to do things the right way. And that's why podcasting was hard for me, because I remember the first episode. I bet you I recorded the introduction 15 times before, and I still wasn't happy with it, you know. But if I'd have waited until I was completely happy with every word that I say, the way that it sounded, if I waited until that point, I'd have never put anything out there.
100%.
You know, and so it's still hard for me to do. I'll go back and listen to an episode before I upload it and think, man, I got to edit out what I just said. You know, like not even the person's response, but maybe the way that I asked the question. I feel like I have to edit that out because I don't want people to perceive it the wrong way. And you're talking about people thinking critically. Man, I tell you, for me, it's so funny because when you get out of a mindset that you used to be in, something that was things that have been indoctrinated into your mind, the first thing you want to do is reject everything about that mindset. And I was there. I mean, I've been in that place where I just wanted to reject everything, but there were still some really good things from that place that looking back on it and in the present now, I'm going, man, I need some of those things back into my life. Does that make sense?
I totally understand. Well, you become stronger. Like the more you learn, the more you actively listen, the more you yourself become critical. You're able to like differentiate between, okay, this is my emotional side saying don't listen, but maybe just because it on the surface it doesn't sound like what it needs to. Let me see if I can learn from this. That's what I really love about the Same Seven, is that it allows people to stay curious. And I think I told you this off records, and I'll say it on record. Like the way you set up the space, the way you set up the platform is not a debate, and it's more so like, why can't we just be curious?
Yeah.
Why can't we learn together in this space? And I really appreciate that. And it even sounds like that's how you approach running the podcast and doing the podcast. Like, I don't know what I'm doing sometimes, but that's the journey of figuring it out. That's the journey of putting this content out there. That's the journey of all of these things that I'm just growing with. So I think that's super powerful.
Oh man, yeah. I don't know what I'm doing every time. not just sometimes. But you learn it and you figure things out. And just getting back to the asking questions thing, that's how every incredible thing that exists today, that's the reason that it exists, is because there was somebody going, what if we did it this way? What if the way that we're doing it now could be done better? What if, I mean, every invention, every creative idea, every blog post, I got to give my bloggers
some love, man. That's what it sounds like.
I've just been trying to buy them back the entire time. How can I get them back in my good graces?
Same7.com.
Yeah. So ask questions. Yeah, be curious. I love that.
Okay. Well, we got to wrap up. So I got to ask you this final question before we leave. What is like maybe I didn't ask, what is something you want to leave our audience with? Because I'm telling you, this is different. This is unorthodox. This is an unorthodox like thing for us to do, but I'm super excited that you're here and like particularly the critical thinking part and the staying curious. So what would you want to leave them with? What thought before we outro this thing?
Yeah, I would say constantly challenge yourself. You know, before you look outside of yourself, it's so important to look in the mirror. To look inwardly and say, man, what are some areas in my life? Where can I get better? What are some things that I can improve on? And I know that's that's not really the topic we were on, but it can be applied to so many different areas. So if we're constantly challenging ourselves, if we're constantly asking ourselves questions, I think it's going to allow us to communicate better with each other, to live better with each other. If everybody with all of these ideas are coming to the table, if everybody's coming together with their ideas and their perspectives, and it truly is an open forum and people are really listening, think about how much greater the world would be. I mean, right now, I mean, you've got a white guy, a black guy, and a brown guy sitting on a white couch, you know?
Middle Eastern, please. Just kidding. I'm messing with you.
But, I mean,
right.
And when this happens, you know, on any platform, any media, good things come from it. Because you have different perspectives. You have different ideas. And it really is an incredible thing.
100%.
It's how it's supposed to be.
100%.
Because this is like 100% 3 different
lives
growing up. Because Mo from Egypt, raised in Egypt and Pittsburgh. You know, I am a country raised, nothing but woods, backwoods, basketball, blacktop, and like bringing all these perspectives and the ideas together has brought us together in something like this, where we've given each other a platform to speak our different beliefs, speak different perspectives, and it helps the audience and it helps people that are listening kind of understand themselves, because it took me a while to understand myself. So I can only imagine what it's like to challenge other people to do the same.
Yeah.
100%. I'm going to recap these bangers. We got some nuggets here. Okay. I'm going to recap it, and then you're going to tell everybody where they can find you, because we're going to have it in the description. Okay? Because you need to lead them to the 77
right.
podcast. Okay? What I really liked, so quick recap. What I really liked is that all this kind of came from you wanting to answer your own question. That's really powerful to me. The second is you're providing a platform for other people to share their input on this particular topic, which is challenging, which I really love, the fact that it's a polarizing discussion. You are open to challenging your own personal belief system, which is then allowing you to strengthen yourself when you argue for your belief system. You have data to back it up. And the platform sounds like it's teaching people to be critical thinkers, which I think is the biggest theme here. Like, stay curious, be a critical thinker. Ask yourself, why do I believe what I believe? Why do I do the things that I do the way that I do it? Is there a way to optimize the way that I'm doing? I know religion can get tricky, but if we were in the realm of creative, like, think about how can I be more critical of what I'm taking in? And then how can I be more critical when I apply it? And the last thing is, it seems like all of it's just a process. So just trust the process, right?
Trust the process.
We know that more than anyone. Like, trust the process, the creative, the discussion, the getting better, the personal journey, all of that. Dude, thank you for being here. Tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, this was a blast. Thank y'all for having me. So, Facebook page, the Same 7 Podcast. Jump on the Facebook page, like it, share it, comment, do all the fun stuff. And then on SoundCloud, the Same 7 Podcast. iTunes, the Same 7 Podcast.
It's the same 7.
It's the same 7 podcast.
It's the same 7 on 3 different media platforms. So however you consume podcasts, that's where you can.
I'm gonna give them one more plug. If you feel like you can hold your own in an intellectual discussion about religion and you're in the surrounding region, is that cool? Hit Kory up.
Please. Yeah, that'd be great.
Trust me, it's a blast to be on his podcast. All right. I'm gonna sign this out.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you for being here on The Creative Brief. As you know, if you liked it, hit the like button. If they didn't like it,
I mean, you can double tap the dislike button. It happens. It happens.
double tap the dislike button. Make sure to share this with your friends. Make sure to leave us a comment down below. Was this helpful for you? Is there any areas of debate that you want to bring forth to the table in the comments? I think Kory's going to be monitoring the chat. He'll maybe chime in and answer a few questions. But we will see y'all in the next one. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Peace.